Director Alfred Hitchcock is one of the true masters of the cinema, but because of his hit TV show, he's usually tagged with the qualifier Master of Suspense. Well, he was much more than that, and in no film is this more obvious than Vertigo from 1958, a study of obsessive fear and longing, with James Stewart playing a detective who has a fear of heights. Here's the famous way we're introduced to his phobia in a chase over the rooftops of San Francisco. Racked by guilt and fear and unable to perform his police duties, Stewart is soon hired by an old friend to shadow the man's possibly suicidal wife, played by Kim Novak. Stewart ends up falling in love with this woman, but he is actually being set up in an elaborate con that Hitchcock lets us in on well before the movie is over, a bold, dramatic move. Unaware of being tricked as part of a murder cover-up, Stewart becomes unglued during the trip the lovers take to an old mission church. Later, with his new love apparently dead, Stewart spots a woman who reminds him of her, and he begins to make her over in the image of his seemingly dead fantasy. Kim Novak, of course, plays both roles.
What?
We could just see a lot of each other.
Why? Does it remind you of her?
And here in the film's most powerful scene is the moment of the makeover, and pay attention to the imagery as well as the heartbreaking musical score by the great Bernard Herrmann. The print of Vertigo, like so many films of the 1950s, was in terrible shape, and it's been restored by the team of Robert Harris and James C. Katz, who, separately or together, have worked similar wonders with Spartacus and Lawrence of Arabia and My Fair Lady. The soundtrack is being heard in stereo for the first time since its initial release. If you haven't seen Vertigo from the master Alfred Hitchcock in a theater, I envy your first time.
It's a wonderful film. And you know, what's so poignant about that last scene that you showed is that she, and I'm not giving anything away because you said it's the same woman, she loves him for himself enough to pretend to be this other woman. He loves this fantasy woman more than the flesh and blood woman in front of him. And as the two of them come together, there's so much poignancy and so much irony and so much passion going on in that room. It's one of the greatest erotic and passionate scenes ever put on film.
Well, let's get even more specific. It can stand for a lot of marital relationships.
Yes,
I mean, let's nail it right down.
Yes,
and I think we really ought to credit the writers of the film as well.
And then in the Hitchcock pictures, you saw a dark side to Jimmy Stewart. You saw the anger, you saw the passion, you saw the troubled internal problems of this guy who had been an American icon. And that was the example of growth that made Jimmy Stewart's career so long and so durable, especially in Vertigo, which was his best picture and Hitchcock's best picture. It's interesting that Stewart played so many biographical roles like Glenn Miller and Charles Lindbergh, and here he was really playing the most autobiographical role that Hitchcock ever wrote, because this guy reflects Hitchcock's own obsession with trying to control the women that he was obsessed by.
This was an actor, and he showed it in a variety of circumstances. He could play anything that was thrown at him with a cleanliness, a clean line. You never caught him acting. That's what Capra used to say about him. He was not someone you thought of as an actor.
You're absolutely right. And what's really typical of both of the giants who died this week is the fact that both of them made it look so easy that they didn't always get the credit they deserved for the acting that they did.
The package includes Vertigo, the film many critics believe is the best one that Hitchcock ever made. A lot of people think our next movie, Vertigo, is the best one that Alfred Hitchcock ever directed. And I know I put it on a very short list, along with Notorious, Strangers on a Train, and Psycho. It's also maybe the most personal film Hitchcock ever made, because it's about a man with an almost fetishistic obsession for a beautiful, cool, blonde woman. And Hitchcock, of course, loved to put cool blondes into his movies and then work them over in the most unpleasant ways. In Vertigo, James Stewart stars as a retired detective with a fear of heights, a man who's hired to shadow another man's wife. The woman is played by Kim Novak, and in this scene, as she tells him about a dream, Stewart realizes that he's fallen in love with her. Stewart's fear of heights is exploited in one of the movie's most famous scenes as he chases Novak up an old mission tower. What's neat there is the way that Hitchcock got that effect of Stewart looking down the stairs and having that sense of vertigo. He did that by doing two things at the same time, one with his camera, one with his lens. He pulled back the camera physically while zooming in with the lens, so you got kind of a tearing sensation there. It was really dramatic. What makes those scenes work so well is the amazingly powerful strength of the obsession, I think, and not just Jimmy Stewart's obsession with that mysterious woman, but Hitchcock's obsession too, because we said that Rear Window was autobiographical because it showed a man who was a voyeur, always looking at other lives through a camera lens. Well, Vertigo is the other half of that autobiography, showing a man who tries to mold and change every woman into his own ideal blonde fantasy woman. The hair always had to be just the same, which is what Hitchcock did with Ingrid Bergman and Grace Kelly and Kim Novak, and we already mentioned Eva Marie Saint and Tippi Hedren. One of the things that made him great, I think, was that, ironically, he really was making movies for himself and about himself.
I think what's fascinating is here's a director working in the Hollywood system and working with big stars, and yet he makes a picture that is totally uncompromising, totally personal. There is no concession here to what the audience might like to see. This is a vaguely... No, it's an unpleasant experience, but hypnotic. And I think it's that, you're quite correct, it is the obsession with the appearance, the surface appearance. This man would rather dress a mannequin. He's turned her into a mannequin. He'd rather do that than engage her personality.
He's not involved with a woman as a personality. He's involved only with the fact that she has to look exactly like this woman of his dreams. And when he finds out, Stewart, at the end of the movie, that he's been tricked, what amazed me seeing this movie again for the first time in 10 or 15 years was the power of his anger. It's almost like the director's anger coming through the camera and speaking through Stewart as if he has all this frustration against these women who he's never been able to deal with, either the character or the director in real life, but only by trying to mold and manipulate them in the movies.
Yes, and the music here is absolutely fabulous.
That's another thing.
Bernard Herrmann, just beautiful on that scene we saw on the beach.